Buenos Aires feels very different from other cities I visited in South America. My first thought was that Buenos Aires is a blend between New York City and Madrid. The city is huge. It has two international airports and public transport is very similar to what we have in Europe. I noticed that there was a lot of police, especially military troops, in certain areas such as the airport and more expensive neighborhoods in the city. Many attractions are free to visit in Buenos Aires, and there are a lot of cultural events in Buenos Aires. After a few days of walking around, I understood that the cultural heritage of everyone who moved to Argentina over the last century made it here as well. And that's why the city is giving a strong sense of Italian and maybe a bit of Spanish culture. But even so, there are unique things that you can probably only find in Argentina, such as the precious mate tea. Argentina has a different vibe than everything else in South America. This is a place for poets, entertainers, storytellers, and academicians. Argentinians are proud people who love their mate tea and take it with them everywhere they go. Art and museums are abundant in Buenos Aires and they're mostly free or they're extremely affordable. Architectural styles transport you back to Europe, and Art Nouveau has an entire boulevard where all the international luxury shops have a street number. It is not a secret anymore that many Europeans fled to Argentina in the past century, and that's why today Buenos Aires is the most European-looking and vibing city in South America. Personally, I believe that's the main reason why many tourists and digital nomads love Buenos Aires so much and choose to spend their European winters there, where they can enjoy the Argentinian summer. What's the best time to visit Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina? The best time to visit Buenos Aires is probably during their summer, which is December to March. In April, when I visited, it was already starting to feel a bit like fall, and that's when most tourists start to leave. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't empty, it was just not as crowded as during the summer. If you don't know already, Argentina has a bunch of different climates. And because of the country's geographical position, these climates happen at the same time in different parts of the country. The climate in Buenos Aires seems to have 4 seasons and is very similar to the European climate, which also has 4 seasons. The only thing to keep in mind is that the seasons are reversed in the South Hemisphere compared to the European or North American climate, which are located in the North Hemisphere. So this means that if you are from Europe or from the US, your summer is their winter. I usually prefer to travel a bit off-season when crowds are smaller and prices are lower, so visiting Buenos Aires in April was a great choice for me. But I did get a bunch of rainy days, which limited the amount of time I had for outdoor activities. And I also needed to wear a jacket, but that wasn't an issue for me. However, keep in mind that Buenos Aires is a big city, welcoming tourists from all over the world. There's so much to do in the city, it will never be boring. And there is always something to do in Buenos Aires, regardless of the time of the year. Safety in Buenos Aires. Before traveling to South America, I was terrified only thinking about the safety issues. The internet stories that I read before traveling there were absolutely dreadful, and it got me to a point where I was having really bad panic attacks. However, after spending about 2 weeks in Buenos Aires out of a total of 3 months in South America, I can definitely say that Buenos Aires is safe. The internet will hurry to tell you all the horrific stories that ever happened there, and everyone's experience will be different. But I can certainly say for a fact from experience that Buenos Aires is safe. I've traveled to over 60 countries on 5 continents, and I have a pretty well-adjusted safety meter. I think it's also important the area of the city where you're staying in Buenos Aires, but most tourists will stay in the safest areas of the city. For instance, I stayed in Recoleta and I do recommend you do the same. Another option is the Palermo neighborhood, which is the area where the really rich people live in Buenos Aires. These locations are safe and they offer a perfect base if you want to explore the most popular spots in the city. For instance, I walked on the streets at night, went out to have drinks and food, used public transport, Ubers, went to the airport during the day and during the night. I used my phone in public and I walked a lot. In general, I did everything I would do in Europe and I didn't notice a safety issue or difference between Europe and Argentina. I'm mostly referring to Europe because this is where I'm from and where I have traveled the most. I visit all countries in Europe, so I know. However, you do need to use your common sense, so always be on the lookout. It's not about the country, in my opinion. It's mostly because locals, especially in places like Argentina, where they have some economical issues at the moment, people working in tourism or that have contact with tourists might try to scam you a bit to get a bit of extra money from you. For instance, I've heard stories as well from people using Ubers. Nothing ever bad happened to me, but you always have to keep an eye on those things, make sure that everything is alright. However, I'm gonna say this, it really helps to speak Spanish. The moment that locals see that you're not a Spanish speaker, they might try to take a bit of advantage, but that wasn't the case for me, so maybe learn a bit of Spanish if you can. And this brings us to the most important topic, which is money in Argentina. When I visited Argentina, the economy was experiencing hyperinflation. What this means is that the prices were rapidly increasing overnight. And what it means for tourists is that the price you would get today for exchanging $100 would change by the same time tomorrow. That's why an unofficial exchange rate was created, the infamous blue dollar rate, which was far better than what the banks were offering. I have an entire guide on my blog about how to use this blue dollar exchange rate if you're a tourist in Argentina. But basically, in Argentina, you can either pay with your international bank card. However, the banks will charge you the official exchange rate, which is much lower than the unofficial one. To benefit from the higher rate, the blue dollar exchange rate, you need to use cash. So, for instance, if you're coming from the US, bring US dollars with you to exchange in Buenos Aires for Argentinian pesos. I would recommend you bring $100 bills, which should be in very good shape, to get the best price. If you bring lower bills, you're gonna get not such a great price. Also, do not exchange more than you need at a given time because the Argentinian pesos loses value every day. So, for instance, if today you're gonna spend just $20, exchange just $20. If you need it for tomorrow, then exchange more, but this is what I did and it was okay. You also notice that a lot of services for tourists will have prices listed in US dollars, but you should always try to pay cash in Argentinian pesos if you want to get the best value for your money. For instance, if you're staying in a hotel for a couple of days, they will ask you how do you want to pay, and you should ask what's the price in Argentinian pesos, and if you can pay in cash. Most likely they will say yes, and you will notice that a price difference in your favor when you convert the price that they give you in Argentinian pesos to US dollars. I recommend that you always use one of the websites that offer the daily blue dollar exchange rate. There are many of them online. Getting around Buenos Aires. The best and cheapest way to get around Buenos Aires is by using public transport. Unlike other places in South America, Buenos Aires has a reliable public transport system that offers metro and buses. Trams used to be the main transportation system in Buenos Aires, but nowadays they only use those for touristic purposes. The public transport uses the same card, and you can purchase that plastic card and then you can top it at any metro station. Each metro trip has a fixed price, and then the bus trips depend on the length of the trip. Attractions in Buenos Aires. There are many attractions in Buenos Aires, and you can spend at least 1 week and not be bored. You have the famous Colón Theater, Casa Rosada, the Metropolitan Cathedral, the Recoleta Cemetery, and so much more. Many of these are in Recoleta and Palermo neighborhoods that are worth exploring as well, because they're beautiful and they have gorgeous architecture. I mentioned that Buenos Aires reminds me of New York and Madrid, and this is also because it has a famous boulevard of theaters, Avenida Corrientes, just like you would find in New York City and Madrid. This boulevard is one of the city's most iconic streets, and it's known for its vibrant theater scene, nightlife, and the historical cinemas. Here is where you need to come if you are interested in performances such as musicals and tango shows, which are very popular in Buenos Aires. At the end of the boulevard, you reach the obelisk, one of Buenos Aires' most iconic landmarks. The obelisk has a height of 67 meters, which is 221 feet, and it was built in 1936 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the city's first foundation. The obelisk is also a focal point for many cultural events, celebrations, and also protests, which unfortunately happen quite a lot in Buenos Aires. Food in Buenos Aires. Yes, if you're a foodie, you're gonna be very happy here, because Buenos Aires is famous for its delicious asado, which is the Argentinian barbecue, which features various cuts of beef cooked over an open flame. The city is also known for the empanadas, the flavorful pastries filled with meat, cheese, or vegetables, and they have a thing for dulce de leche, because Argentinians love their alfajores, which are basically two soft crumbly cookies sandwiched together with a generous layer of dulce de leche, which is a sweet caramel-like spread. Additionally, Buenos Aires is celebrated for its Malbec wine and Italian-influenced dishes such as pizza and pasta, which of course reflect its diverse culinary heritage. As I said, I felt a lot of Italian and European vibes in general in Buenos Aires, and I had some of the best pasta there. Is Buenos Aires worth a visit? Yes. Buenos Aires is definitely worth a visit, there is no doubt about it. There is no better spot to indulge in some European vibe outside of Europe. But one thing I have to stress about is that Argentina is nowhere near anything else, and a trip to Argentina will take just as long as a trip between the US and Europe. We might not realize it as we look at the globe, but Argentina is super far away from everything. So my biggest tip is to carefully plan your trip to Argentina, and if possible get a return flight, as those are better priced than one-way tickets. And I speak from personal experience when I say that you do not want to feel stranded in Buenos Aires, where the closest and cheapest you can get is Brazil, which is nowhere near home anyway.